It sounds cool to me. I mean, I love watching you guys talk about
I don't
this
have that
stuff.
right for it.
I think our minute's about up, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
I give a version of this talk about every year, at least to the Math 502 students, because they're going to be elementary or secondary education teachers, so they can pretty much anticipate being poor for the rest of their lives, and free software is probably worth knowing about. I get asked about it from time to time. Most of you guys probably have some introduction to free software, am I right? We have some sense of free software and the 4 freedoms and so on. Does this seem like a yes, I get the 4 freedoms, or no, I just thought it didn't cost anything? I don't have a sense of this. Where are you guys at? So this is a problem with English, actually. When people talk about free software, free has 2 meanings, right? Free means it doesn't cost anything. But it also means I'm not in jail. And one kind of free is different than the other. And so when people hear about free software, well, it sounds like free software is, kind of like free hors d'oeuvres and lots of other free stuff. People usually think that it doesn't cost anything. Free software doesn't cost anything. But in fact, that is more a side effect of free software than a definition of free software. Free software is software, I guess, that is not in jail, I suppose. It has freedom about it. And so the 4 freedoms of free software, you can look these up at the Free Software Foundation website. GNU, I think, is their website, isn't it? GNU.org. But if you type Free Software Foundation into Google, you would find it. They were written for computer people. You can tell because the first one is freedom number 0, which I think most people should be able to appreciate. I always love that. The first freedom of free software or the 0th freedom of free software, is the freedom to run the software for any purpose. Maybe 0 is the right number for that. I mean, if you can't run the software, then, what's the point? But the freedom is a little bigger than that. When they say you can run the software, they really say you can run the software for any purpose, and people don't always understand that sometimes the software that you use or have licensed, you technically can't use for just anything. And I always keep a few examples that I have used from time to time. Sometimes people talk about free for non-commercial use. You might have seen software like that you can download from a site. It's free for non-commercial use. You're a student, you're not commercial, so it's okay. It's free for you. But it's not really free for any purpose, then, so it wouldn't satisfy the 0th freedom of free software. It doesn't really have freedom. And so that's one example. Another example that it used to be in the past, I don't use the software, so I haven't read the license in many years, but it used to be that Microsoft Front Page, which you make web pages out of, had a clause that said you couldn't use it to disparage Microsoft. I'm pretty sure that I remember this being in the license at one point. You want to buy my software? That's fine. You can't turn around and use my goddamn software. I can't believe I just said that on recording. To disparage me. And so, if your software had a clause like that, you couldn't count it as free. One that I'm more familiar with is Oracle. Oracle software is not free for any purpose. You can use Oracle database software for almost any purpose. But there is at least one purpose I know of that is forbidden. You can't run Oracle software in order to generate benchmarks. To say, write a magazine article comparing Oracle's database software with other people's database software to see whose software is the fastest, the best, whatever. That is not a licensed use of Oracle. You can't do it. You do it, they'll sue you. and they'll win. You'll lose. I don't think anybody ever wins that fight. Right? So, not free for any purpose. I mean, if say you're a person who writes computer magazine articles, then this is a purpose for which Oracle is not particularly useful for you. You can't use it for that. So, the essential freedom, the very first freedom of free software is you got to be able to run it for anything, even stuff the author didn't think of. You know, it turns out this software is really good for this, and I, as the author, think, oh, I wish you wouldn't use my software for that. I don't really know if I agree with that. It's sort of tough. You know, just because I couldn't dream of it doesn't mean you can't do it. You can run the software for any purpose. Freedom 1, the second freedom, if you like, is the freedom to study and adapt the software. Of course, to be able to study and adapt the software kind of assumes that you have, as you compute people, right? What do you have to adapt software to study it?
Source code.
You'd need to have the source code. So if it was written in C, you'd need the C source code. If it was written in Java, you'd need the Java source code. So you might have heard of open source, right? And in many respects, people say open source, free software. Same thing. And in lots of respects, that's really not that far from what the reality is too. But the truth is that free software is, it's not just about the source. Open source guys, at least at the beginning was said, open source methodology is just better. It's better to develop in an open environment and to make your end users collaborators. That's just a better way to make software. Free software, people are saying, no, these are about freedoms that we should demand of authors. Source code is one of the freedoms or essential things that we should demand from authors and that we should want in our software. But it's a little bit bigger. It's about the kind of freedoms that we as people using the software have. So open source is maybe a little bit, I mean, there might be separate circles that have a big overlap. Or it might be that free software is a subset. There might be some things that are open source that aren't free. I think most free stuff would generally be considered open source. Because open source, they're not quite as... The free software people, they're the zealots. They're the real idealists, really believers. I guess I'm one of those believers for the most part. So I think they really hold the greatest standard in a sense in this category. So you got to have the freedom to study and adapt the software. So your software might have a bug. If I'm talented enough, should be able to study and figure out why it's got that bug. Or make it work a little bit differently. Because I thought of something your software might be good for that you didn't think of. Or that's just really annoying and I don't want that in my software. You know, that kind of thing. I should be able to study and adapt the software. That's the first freedom, or the second freedom, depending on how you count. Freedom number 2, or the third freedom, is the freedom to copy and distribute the software. That might not seem like, you know, in today's internet age, that might not seem like copy all kinds of stuff and share stuff. Free software freedoms, they go back further than the internet, though. Where the internet as we know it today, they go back further than, you know, BitTorrent and LimeWire and Napster, which made it all happen, right? They go back to before, you know, pornography made the internet commercially successful. They go back way far. So this freedom to copy and distribute the software, which might not seem like quite so much, because we copy and distribute everything these days, it seems like. Maybe it was a bigger deal back then. But if you got a piece of software and you like it, I'm a teacher and I'm working